Welcome to Unit 6. This lecture format is going to be something that I want us to use and utilize as much as or as little as you see fit. I'd like you to use it because I'd like to see my time and effort being put into something that's worthwhile for you, and hopefully you'll find it that way. I'm going to do my best to stick straight to the big ideas, the big key concepts and understandings. I also want to make sure that you understand that I'm doing this uh, clearly for your benefit. The content is going to come straight from the textbook. I'm going to do my best to go through the big ideas that's in the book, to pull out those key ideas, the key thoughts and key terms, um, and apply them in a way that allows you to take the biggest and the best and go with it. And so it can be used in supplement to your textbook reading as you go through the reading and study guide, or it can be done in place of even, and so just kind of keep those ideas in mind. So, so Unit 6 covers chapters 10, 11, and 12. These lectures might be a good way to go through it quickly. With this lesson and this lecture, 6.1, I'm looking at chapters 10, section 1, and section 4. Because of the way the chapter is organized, I thought it'd be nice to just look at 1 and 4, and then look at the House of Representatives and the Senate in Lecture 2. In a matter of introducing this chapter in this unit, I'd like to look at a quote from Woodrow Wilson, who was our 20th president. He also served in a number of roles as a politician. He says, anyone who is unfamiliar with what Congress actually does and how it does it, with all its duties and all its occupations, is very far from a knowledge of the constitutional system under which we live. All right, so I'm a history teacher first, and what I see there in that quote is it's right in the middle of, or the beginning of a strong progressive movement, and the Constitution is changed forever by that movement. There are a lot of, during this time, a lot of people misusing the system, and we see members of Congress, especially senators, in the back pockets of big businessmen. And so I'm not sure if he's saying this quote or saying this in a cynical way, that how education is important, very cynically, or if he's saying it in the fact that we should know. If you're going to participate as a citizen, you should know. And so we can look at it both ways. And so, again, looking at that, it's our responsibility to do that. So when we look at the national legislature, this Congress that we are referring to here, that is our lawmaking body. The legislature does that. It makes laws. And our lawmaking body is called Congress. The framers of the Constitution created a Congress with two bodies, a small Senate and a much larger House of Representatives. Each Congress since 1789 has met for a term of 2 years. Those terms are now divided into two one-year sessions. That's why it matters. That's the big idea here. When we look at having two chambers or two houses, that term is bicameral. Historically, we have, historically is one of the reasons, but there are three reasons why bicameralism is what we have and why it was decided. Bicameral comes to us from a historical tradition. Our political system is based on that of England, and England had a two-house parliament, the House of Lords and the House of Commons, and so historically that's our tradition. Practically, the practical reason for bicameralism is because during the Constitutional Convention itself, there was a dispute as to what our legislative body should look like. Smaller states felt that representation in Congress should be equal. Bigger states felt it should be based on population. Both sides are right, and so the compromise down the middle was, we'll have two houses, we'll have two chambers, and one of them will be based on equality, and the other one will be based on population. So that way, in the House of Representatives, the larger states have larger influence. The smaller states have smaller influence. And in the Senate, each state has 2 votes. It's as equal as it gets. And so that's the practical reason for bicameralism. The third reason is theoretical. The idea with two houses is the framers of the Constitution believed And they favored a bicameral Congress in order that one house might act as a check on the other. And the textbook's got a nice little story in there about a conversation between George Washington and Thomas Jefferson about how one house helps to cool and calm maybe passions and influences in the other. And so our Congress is made up of two houses. We have the Senate and the House of Representatives. And when you look at the Capitol building, that's exactly what it looks like. On the far left, that's the Senate chambers. On the far right, it's the House chambers. And everything in between is offices and really cool stuff. It's a big building. If you've been there because of an 8th grade class trip or 8th grade opportunity with Mr. Moore, awesome. If you haven't, hopefully sometime in your life you're able to. My first time I went as a senior in high school, and I've been back once since. I took an 8th grade group in Union City for once, and that was awesome. So we'll talk more about the Senate and the House later on specifically. But looking generally at Congress and so on, we are currently, right now, in the first session of the 113th Congress. And when I look at what that definition is, I'm looking at the difference between a term and a session. Okay, and so these are the two things that we need to understand. A term is a 2-year period between elections. So elections are held for Congress or congressional seats every 2 years. And so between every 2-year election period, that's a term. And they're numbered consecutively. The first term started in 1789 and it ended 1791 with the next election. And so that's a term. A session is the period of time during the year that Congress meets for business in conducting business. A session is, usually, it falls. There's 2 sessions. One year, one the other year. Increasingly, sessions are longer and longer because the business is greater and greater, or maybe inefficiencies are greater and greater, and it takes longer to do things. I don't know. Up for debate. But you see that the 20th Amendment was the most recent revision to what Congress and congressional sessions should be. The big deal with the 20th Amendment was that it would start on the 3rd day of January instead of the 4th of March. That was a big change, in the 1930s, I believe. When we look at terms and sessions, we can look also at Article 1, Section 5, Clause 4. It says, neither house shall without consent of the other, adjourn for more than 3 days, not to any other place than that to which the 2 houses shall be sitting. Fancy word there means is that adjournment is the term that we're looking at. And adjourn means to suspend session until the next session. Sessions can be called into recess at any time for holidays and things like that, like Thanksgiving and Easter and so on. Sessions will go into recess. But otherwise, sessions continue. Congress goes back to work every day and does the things that it does. Another part in there, looking at some special terms, we have what's called a special session of Congress. And we look at Article 2, Section 3. We look at he may on extraordinary occasions. Well, he meaning who? He is the President of the United States. Article 2 of the Constitution is all about the President. And so that's referring to powers of the President. He may call or convene both houses or either of them. So that's what a special session is for extraordinary reasons, for extreme measures, for emergency situations. The President is able to call one or both houses, and it's rarely used. I think the last time the textbook said it was used was in 1948 when Harry Truman called Congress together to figure out a stop to inflation after World War II. In that same text, we see also a second power, and this is a really funny one. Prorogue is something that never been used, but it's a presidential power. So it finishes, and in case of disagreement between them with respect to the time of adjournment, the President may adjourn the houses of Congress to such a time as he shall think proper. So the prorogue is the President's power to end a congressional session. It has never been used, but it exists. So that right there, I'm gonna go back. That ends, section 1 stuff. Okay, and so if you're looking to pause and do some study guide work, go ahead and do that. So we can jump to section 4 now. We look at members of Congress. Composition of Congress is very complex. It used to be only white, rich landowners and or former businessmen, and so on. But it's not the case anymore, right? It's more than just a little complex. It truly reflects the complex nature of American society, and I think it's an important thing. And maybe that's one of the reasons also why it's hard to get things done, because not everybody agrees on everything anymore. And so the graphic you see on the right is a really awesome way to look at it, and it's I got it from Business Week, and so the link there, if you type that into your browser, you can go ahead and take a look at that in more detail. But it does show, it shows occupations, it shows education, it shows religion, it shows all sorts of things. It also shows how this 113th Congress is different than the 112th. So that's kind of cool. When we look at what members of Congress do, senators and members of the House of Representatives, which we do call congressmen or congresswomen. So there's senators and there's congressmen. And so when I say congressmen or congresswomen, I'm referring to members of the House of Representatives. Members of Congress serve 5 distinct roles. Distinct, maybe they'll overlap a little bit. So we see they're legislators and representatives for their constituents. And constituents is a fancy word that means the people whom they represent, right? They are representatives, and so they have people back home in their states that they answer to. And so the legislators, which means they pass laws on behalf of the people of their state, they also represent them and they vote for them. There are lesser roles, and so being a member of a committee is important, but that's they're not elected to do that. They also serve their constituents in a lot of different ways, and then they're politicians, and I hate that term, and I think we can look at that term as being a little bit unnecessary, but that's the reality. And so we'll look at in the next couple of slides here representatives, committee members, and being servants, particularly representatives and committee members. So representatives. There's 4 different ways that representatives vote on behalf of their constituents, because that's what a representative means, that we elect these representatives to go to Congress, to go to government and vote for us. And when they do that, there's 4 different ways they can do that. They can do it as a trustee, a delegate, a partisan, or as a politico, which is a funny term, but it has a meaning. So if they're voting as a trustee, that means they believe that each question they face must be decided on its merits, and that their conscience and independent judgment are their guides. They don't really have like an alliance, or they don't have an affiliation. They're doing it. They believe that they've been elected to be the person that they are and to serve their own judgment. And I think it's a scary thing. It sounds like someone who's very wishy-washy and easily swayed. That's my opinion. I'm your teacher. I have opinions. Don't let me influence your opinions. Delegate is the next term. To be a delegate means that you are a delegate. That means you are serving the people that sent you. So delegates see themselves as agents of those who elected them. They believe that they should vote the way they think the folks back home would want. And so, I think that this is something that all members of Congress should consider. Maybe they're willing to ignore what the party believes and vote more what the people back home believe. But that would mean that representative has they're in touch with their constituents, and that's not always the case. The next way to look at it is a partisan. Partisan means, by definition, that they have an allegiance to their political party, and so they feel duty-bound to vote in line with the party platform and the wishes of their party's leaders. And this is kind of an increasing factor. Most studies of legislators' voting behavior show that partisanship is the leading factor influencing their votes on most important measures. It's easily explainable. And then politicos is the mix and mashup of it all. It's an attempt to combine the basic elements of the trustee, delegate, and partisan roles. They try to balance these often conflicting factors, their own views of what is best for their constituents and or the nation as a whole. They try to balance the political facts of life and the peculiar pressures of the moment. So take that as you wish. Committee members, more is going to be discussed about what committees and their function when we talk more in the next chapter on what Congress does and Congress in action. However, committees provide it's a really important oversight function, and when we talk about what members of Congress do in their jobs, to be an oversight is important. It's that important checks and balances feature. Congress has powers over the executive, and one of the important ones is where Congress says, we passed this law. It's important to us that you execute it the way we wanted it to be executed. And so this is where you'll hear the term that there's a Senate hearing on such and such behavior, such and such agency. And what they're doing is they're saying, hey, listen, we told you that this is the law, and we feel like your execution of it is crappy. We need to fix that. So, the last thing we want to look at is the things that Congress have and can do as part of their job. There's all sorts of different privileges. One of the big privileges is compensation. They make a good chunk of change, and so it's very appealing for a congressman to try and stay in office because it's a good moneymaker. So there's that. Actual compensation. There's also like non-salary compensation, and one of those big ones is a franking privilege. And franking privileges means that they have an ability to send mail, and they have unlimited printing ability too, to send mailings for official business, and their signature works as their postage stamp, which is kind of cool. I've always thought. So yeah, that's good. There's also this thing on immunities. There's a part, Article 1, Section 6, Clause 1 says, members of Congress shall in all cases except treason, felony, and breach of the peace, be privileged from arrest during their attendance at the session of their respective houses, and in going to and returning from the same. And so this protection was intended to be to keep them safe from their business. If they're doing something that requires indiscreet matters, they're members of Congress, and they should be free from someone feeling that they need to be held accountable for a decision they made or something they had said in debate. So they should be free from that. However, maybe this is being abused a little bit. So it doesn't keep them, free from, committing any crime. But if it's a crime related to their duties, then yes. So that's the end. That's my last slide. And as I close here, I want to make sure that we all understand that this lecture served hopefully a good purpose for you. Take it or leave it. Hopefully you take it, and hopefully you tell me how much benefited you. That way it encourages me to continue to do this. Going back, to our opener, we're going to look at sections 10.2 and 10.3 in lecture 6.2. Don't forget that it's important to participate in the discussions. It's also important to complete your study guides, and the quizzes that are available that are linked on the wiki page are also beneficial to you, and be noted that they are not limited on attempts, so use it as much as you need to. Hopefully I get better at this as we go along, and if you have any tips, tricks, pointers, let me know.